A 3, a 2, a 1. What's up, guys? This is Ben with the Practice Perfect Journal podcast, coming at you with yet another wonderful episode for me to talk into your ear holes. And this is where I go out and I find all the good stuff, all the bad stuff when it comes to practicing around meta learning, around how can we learn something faster, how can we develop our skills faster as ideally as musicians, but if you're listening to this, it applies for whatever you want to get better at. So this is where I try and I go out and I find all the good stuff, bring it back, distill it, and give it to you guys, and hopefully take out all the nonsense and the fluff and the other crap that doesn't matter. And tie in a little bit of real life situations from myself. But yeah, so that's where we're at. And it's a Monday, getting close to Christmas. I haven't bought gifts yet, don't tell my family. Thank God for Amazon, because I'm going to be doing that here before too much longer. Don't look at the boxes. Don't look at the boxes in the back. Let's just cover that up. Slowly cleaning up the apartment. I picked up all the plastic that my couch came in and got rid of that, so at least I have a floor now, so that's always nice. Got a nice workout in, even though I woke up late because you can see these bags under my eyes. I got the Prada bags going on, or the Gucci bags going on. I realized that the Expanse on Amazon Prime dropped the new season, I don't know, recently. And seasons 1 through 3 were awesome, so I was like, I'm going to watch season 4, let's go. And I meant to do a lot of stuff in the afternoon yesterday, so that would have been Sunday. And I got up kind of early Sunday and got about an hour and a half of practice in, hour and a half. And, an hour. And then I cleaned my apartment. And then I proceeded to lay on that couch right there, right behind me, and watch about 7 episodes. So I did a lot of nothing. And went to sleep late, woke up late. So this whole day has been kind of a mess. And it's been a little cray-cray today. But that's how it goes. But speaking about practice, I'm going to take you back in time and go through we're going to talk about the different levels of practice. There's 3 different types of practice. And I've gone through all of these levels. So hopefully you can take what I'm going to tell you now and you can avoid the pitfalls that I went through for a while. The pitfalls that caused me to stagnate, the pitfalls that caused me to almost stop playing music altogether. So for this, we need to go back in time a little bit. And I did what a lot of people do in the beginning, right? So I know I talk about my story ad nauseum, but it's important because it serves a purpose. So, excuse me as I got this gleam coming off my Mr. Clean, my bright and shiny head. Nah, that didn't help. All right, well, whatever. You gotta be blinded by my dome. So it goes back to when I first started practicing, right? I first started playing, and when I started, it was awesome, right? Like I played Rock Band, and I got to a point where I could like at least sort of resemble something that sounded like the drums. And if you don't play drums, guys, by the way, this applies to whatever. I could have been playing guitar. I just happened to be a drummer, so that's where most of my stories come from. So again, I played Rock Band. I got good enough to the point where I had some independence, so I could like do a 2 and a 4 beat. So just like the boom, 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 kind of thing going on. And I got to the point where like it was decent. So then I was able to get my first kit. And again, not telling anyone in my family that I was buying drums. Thankfully, we lived out in the middle of nowhere, and my family was already kind of a musical family, so we were used to loud noises. And I just kind of self-taught myself from there, and I found free drumlessonsonline.com, which turned into Drumeo, and I just found as many resources as I could to get as good as possible. And I did that for probably about a year or so, maybe 2 years. I don't know. I forget the timeline back in the day. But we went from that And then I got to a point again where I got good enough. We talked about being good enough, and I think 2 podcasts ago, last podcast, I don't remember, but I got good enough, and then I just started playing songs. And did I play them in a way that would help me learn the songs? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I did what everyone probably does back in the day, or when they first start getting good enough where they can start playing songs not completely incorrectly, and it resembles something of a song, has a little bit of structure, and you're probably hitting like 60% of the song, right? But you don't care because you're having fun and you're playing along. So I did that, and I just kind of played straight through the songs, right? I would just start at the beginning and I just play straight through. And I thought that by playing it over and over again, I would get better at it. Like, that was my practice, right? That was me practicing, was playing the same like 5, 6, 7 songs over and over and over again. Maybe I would throw in a couple of random songs that I never quite got to, or I didn't like as much, or I was just bored and feeling. And I would just kind of do those over and over and over again. And I got to a point in some of them where I was like, they were okay, but there was definitely like those pain points. I was like, I would be playing along okay, and then just jagged, and I would I would screw up that part, or I just wouldn't be able to figure out a part in general. I'd just be like, I'll just play it good enough, or worse, I would be teaching myself how to play it incorrectly. Like, I thought I knew what they were doing, but I didn't have a clue because I didn't take the time to research it and to actually see what was going on. I just kind of played it. And again, that's where I stagnated. That's where I flatlined. And it wasn't after a while until I found some webinars online, and I realized, there's like better ways to go about practicing. There's a better way to take what I'm trying to do and learn it, like break it down and learn it and apply that. And then I started doing that for a while. And it got to the point after a while of doing that, like I bought a bunch of books. I bought a bunch of different like music books. I got one beside me. Like, it's called Stick Control, so it's for snare drummers, but if you want to get faster hands, I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. And then a bunch of other random books that I found, one by Aaron Edgar, all sorts of crazy odd time signatures and syncopations and stuff like that, so a lot of fun stuff. So I started working through that super hard, and I had a handful of exercises that I would do, and I had moved. This is the last place I lived at, so I was actually living in, it's kind of like a townhouse kind of thing, so I was a top floor and a bottom floor, so me and my buddy lived there, and thankfully he was cool as shit, and he didn't care that I played, but I also had an electric kit, so it wasn't as bad, but I'm also a drummer, and I know that the thwacking every single day is probably annoying as shit, but he was cool about it, so I would practice a couple hours a day, like 2 hours a day, and no coach, no nothing like that. I would just take these online lessons, these online webinars, and I would kind of take the, again, that's the place where I got those webinars was musicmentorsonline.com, so check it out. David Puckett, the drummer for We Came as Romans, he's the CEO, he's a rad dude. So I was doing all those, and I started like really opening my eyes and being like, I've been trying to go alone at this, and I actually don't know anything. Like, of course I got stuck, and of course I stagnated because I was trying to teach myself, and it's like, dude, you're down here, you're like at a 2, and you're trying to take yourself higher. Like, you don't even know what you don't know. It's like, that's the problem. A lot of us, we think we know what we're trying to get to, but what we're doing it in a really inefficient manner. So after a while, like I did that for a very long time, and then I kind of stagnated a little bit as of late because moving, new job, doing more of this stuff, and I just kind of let it kind of fade away. Still practice enough to not be a complete embarrassment if I sat back down with the kit, but I realized recently then, again, like after reading Peak by Anders Ericsson, that it's like, dude, I'm missing a key fundamental thing, and it's core to if you want to become a master or an expert at whatever it is you're doing, like, you have to do this. And I was like, I read it and I went through everything, and I was like, dude, I'm missing this part. Like, if I don't do this, it's going to take me exponentially longer to get to where I want to be if I don't implement this immediately. And so I went out and I actually found a coach, which was the main thing that I was missing. So I went out and I found the best coach that I could find, or at least I think one of the best coaches when it comes to drumming and music. Dude's name is Bruce Becker. He is a wizard when it comes to when it comes to technique. Because I knew that in my head, I was like, okay, I need to relearn technique, and I want to make sure that I can start at the base building blocks and kind of lay that solid foundation and then build from there. So if I can get my technique really well down pat, then from there I'll have a good solid foundation where everything else will kind of layer on top of it, and I can go faster and faster that way. But yeah, if I have incorrect technique and I injure myself and I'm out of the game in like 5 years because I fucked up my wrist, then that's a problem. So anyway, so this is where I'm at now, and I am now in the third tier of practice. So what are they? So we went to the first one. The first tier was me trying to teach myself, right? It wasn't, actually, the first tier wasn't when I was taking the online courses through freedrumlessons.com, or Drumeo, before it was Drumeo. That was actually tier number 2. Tier number 1, the worst tier you can do, which is what most people do, is when I tried to learn how to play songs front to back, when I played them straight through. That's what we call naive practice, and I don't know if I talked about this or not before, but what naive practice is, it's doing something repeatedly over and over and over again, and expecting that the repetition is going to make you better at it. You're not like, there's no feedback involved, you're just kind of doing it, and like there's no goals, and it's mindless repetition. And again, this is all distilled from the book Peak. So again, if you want to go super deep into it, pick up Peak by Anders Ericsson. But otherwise, I'm giving you the good distilled version. But so he talked about naive practice, and that's what I was doing. I was practicing like a naive fool, for lack of a better terms, because occasionally I might go and try and figure out what I was missing, and I realized I was like, oh, I need to learn my rudiments. For you non-drum players, it's like I needed to learn my scales or my chords, right? And so I taught myself how to do those through some YouTube and everything else, but just like learning how to play songs, like I would try and watch playthroughs of songs on Facebook to kind of figure out what they were doing, but it was mostly just me playing it front to back over and over and over again, and it was more self-medication than actual practice. And what I mean by self-medication is, it's like, when you're practicing, and then after a while you're just like, dude, forget this. Like, I don't even care. I don't even care anymore. You just start jamming out to the same 3 songs that you're really, really good at. You're not practicing those 3 songs. You're already at that threshold. Like, you're doing nothing to make those songs better. You're just playing to feel better about yourself, right? Because when you practice, you feel terrible. At least I know that I do, because you're playing stuff that's hard that you're not good at, and you just feel like a terrible, terrible musician, or that you're terrible at whatever it is that you're doing. So you get stuck, and you're just like let me play this riff that I know really well. Let me play this part that I know really well. Let me play this song that I really like and I'm really good at, so I don't feel so bad about myself. And the reason why that's not practice is because you're not finding those pain points that you need to smooth out. You're just kind of playing something. Like, it's naive practice because you're just doing something and you're keeping it at the same level, right? Practice should stretch you and make you grow. But the problem is naive practice just keeps you flatlined. Like, you kind of get a little bit better. Let's do this way so you can see past the mic. It kind of gets you a little bit better. But you master all these super easy things, all the super fundamental things, if you don't teach them to yourself incorrectly to begin with. So you kind of like get to the certain easy level, then you plateau and you flatline. It's like in Peak, I'm referencing the book again, yes. They use a example about learning how to play tennis. And that example is like, you want to learn how to play tennis, so like you and your friend are like, yeah, let's go play tennis, that'll be great. And you go and you buy a racket and you buy some clothes, and so that way you're committed, you put some money down, so that way it's not like you can't opt out anymore. So you do that, and then you get 1 or 2 lessons to kind of try and get a little bit of the fundamentals down, so that way it's like, okay, I can at least hit the ball back and forth, right? You take a couple lessons, and then they teach you a couple things, and then you go and you start, those like anyone who's played tennis, there's like a wall on the one side of the tennis court that has like a target on it. I don't know if they all have those, but I know the place that I played at back in the day did. And So you sit there and you volley back and forth, and you do that for a while until the point where you feel that you can comfortably play a tennis match against a wall. So you go and you do that, and you can get a little bit of a forehand down. And I'm not actually a tennis player. I've just sort of played a little bit, and I know a little bit of tennis, but otherwise I never actually got good at tennis. I could hold a volley, sort of, with one of my friends back in the day. But anyway, I digress. So then you go and you get a couple more lessons and you get a little bit better, and then you start playing with your friends, and then it's like it's fun, and you just start playing games against your friends, and all your friends kind of suck too, so you're just kind of playing games, and you keep playing games. You kind of start getting to a decent threshold where you can have like a nice little, you can have fun. You can go out and you can have a nice game, nice set of games. But then it's like, okay, then you're expecting just the games over and over and over again are going to make you better. And they will to a certain point. Like once you kind of get some of those fundamentals down, and once you get some of those, that's the easy stuff automatized. So like when you learn it and it kind of gets ingrained into your brain, it's like, well, that's where muscle memory comes in. So when you no longer have to think about how to hit the forehand, that's when stuff gets automatized. And so you can kind of do that. You can kind of go back and forth. But there's like those couple pieces of your game that you just can't quite fix. And then you start playing against people who are better. Like maybe you join a tennis league and then you try and play against some people who are better. And they realize it's like, oh, if I hit it to him about like chest high and he has to like do a backhand, he's going to miss every time. And you'll never get better at that by just playing games, because it's probably going to happen to you so infrequently that your brain doesn't have a chance to get used to the motion of doing that, of the backhand. And that's where the next level comes in with purposeful practice. So we start at naive practice, then we go to purposeful practice. And what this is it's practice that has specific goals attached to it. It requires your full attention. It gives you feedback on pain points, right? So if something's hard and you're stuck, like you're finding that spot that's like, you're cruising along and all of a sudden you hit that bump, right? You're like, oh, that's a pain point. That's a road bump. I got to smooth that out. I got to work on that. It's like, anyone like back in high school when you took shop class, right? You're working with the wood and like you find the knot and you got to sand out the knot so that way it's smooth. Same thing. And your purposeful practice is finding those knots and smoothing them out. It requires you to get out of your comfort zone. And it requires a plan and it requires motivation. Now, obviously, you can see how this is a lot different than naive practice. So, purposeful practice, let's go back to the tennis example, where you realize, oh, I have this pain point of my backhand. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out a plan to just work on your backhand. That's like the one thing you're going to work on. So, your specific goal, I want to hit like 10 backhands in a row without missing. And from there, it's like, so I want to do 10 backhands in a row. And then, like, if I do that, then it's a success. It's probably not going to happen in enough repetition for you to actually start practicing during a game, during a tennis match, to get actually good at the backhand. But if you set up a practice situation afterwards, where it's like, oh, this is the thing that I need to work on, so let me just set up like an hour where I just hit backhands, until you get to the point where it's like all of a sudden your body realizes, oh, this is how I do it. And it gets a little bit automatized. Sorry, my nose is itching. This is really annoying. And it gets automatized enough to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. Then all of a sudden, you go and play the game, you go into the game, and that skill threshold is already there. You're good. So this is kind of like going back to me with the music example, with the drumming example. When I went and I did those lessons, like right, started taking those online webinars, and I kind of started seeing like, oh, these are my pain points. These are where I'm struggling and having problems. I took those lessons that they taught, and then I took them and I plugged them into what I was doing. So then I realized, I was like, okay, so this is how I take what they taught me here, and I plug it into my practice so I can get better at this, and this. Right? Or it's like, I want to get better at this, and this. What did I learn from a previous webinar that I can take and apply into this pain point? And I probably spent more money on those webinars than I should have, because I probably should have just, I did the typical, I want to buy all the things and just learn instead of actually putting the practice, because practice is hard. But I learned a lot of good things. I could plug in. I'd be like, okay, I'm struggling with this. What do? Take this, plug it in. It's like I'm struggling with my feet. How do I get better with my bass drum? Find a webinar with that and plug it in. I'm struggling with my hands. What do I do? Take it and plug it in. I'm struggling with this, or this. And boom, boom. And that's what personal practice did. To help me stretch myself. And I started getting better again. Go figure. I stopped trying to use my knowledge, and I took the knowledge of someone else who had already done it, and I plugged it in. The problem was, from here, I should have been using more feedback. I wasn't. So I should have been recording myself, excuse me as I stumble over my words. I should have been recording myself and then watching it back and seeing where those pain points are, because when you're playing and practicing, it's harder to notice what you don't notice that you're doing. So for example, I was practicing the other day, and I realized with my drumstick, like every time I would come up, I would do this. Like I would let go of the stick. And don't do that. That's a no-no. Keep your fingers on the stick. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until I watched the video back, and I was like, holy crap, they keep dropping the stick practically. So I needed some extra feedback. And I did that for a very long time, and I used these webinars that I learned, and I started getting more. I started buying the books. I started using knowledge from other places, and I would figure out what I was trying to do, and I would take my goal. So it's like, okay, I want to get better at hands. Boom. Stick control. Work through it front to back as best I could. I want to get better at whatever this thing is. Take another book that I bought, and I applied it, and I started learning it, and I started getting better. And it stressed myself, and it was hard. But it was definitely rewarding, because I definitely felt the growth. And then I kind of petered off for a little while. And then eventually recently I dropped into the last level. And this is the key when everyone talks about the 10,000 hours to mastery, right? It's 10,000 hours of this type of practice. Purposeful practice is very close to this, but it's missing one key fundamental thing. And the thing that you need is called deliberate practice. And this is where we say 10,000 hours of deliberate practice makes you an expert. And 10,000 hours is arbitrary, because again, if we look back at the study that Anders Ericsson ran on the top violinists at whatever that school was in Germany, they did 7,500 hours, so 7,500 hours. So they weren't at 10,000 hours, but they were pretty darn good. Like they were the best of the best in their class. Like they were handpicked by their teachers as being potential superstars. So, and you could do more, you could do less. I feel like it honestly depends on how competitive the field is that you're in, depending on how many hours you put in and how good of a coach or teacher that you had. But 10,000 hours is generally kind of like if you put 10,000 hours of deliberate practice into anything, you're probably going to be top 1% of people. So, but what is deliberate practice, and why is it different than purposeful practice? Well, deliberate practice, it's purposeful practice, but it knows where it's going, right? So this is where, instead of just taking the lessons from the webinars and plugging them into what I think, like where I think that they should go, being like, I need to do hands, like let me get my hands faster by doing this thing that I was taught. Instead, I would have an actual teacher. I would find someone who's like the best of the best in their field, and also best in the best in regards to teaching. Not just because there's a lot of top performers who can't teach for crap, right? Like they're really, really good players, performers, whatever, but they're not good educators. And that's no fault of their own. That's not a thing that they've ever practiced, and they're not good at. They're not good at communicating the thing that they've been doing for so long, because it's just automatic for them. They don't necessarily know the step-by-step format that they should go in. So there's two key principles when it comes to deliberate practice in field. So first of all, deliberate practice, it's going to be in a field that's relatively developed, right? So what does a relatively developed field mean? It's a field that's been around for a long time. There's objective ways to measure the performance of like if you're doing good or bad. So like gardening, it's not gardening's been around for a very long time, but there's no like objective way to measure if you're good at gardening or not, other than like potentially you have like a nice garden, but it's not competitive. There's no like experts that are going to judge your gardening unless you're in some kind of crazy gardening competition. I don't know how that would work, but gardening's probably not one. The field is going to be competitive enough so that way it challenges the performers to continue to go up. It challenges people to continue to push the bar farther forward, stretch themselves, continue to break records and move it forward. So pretty much all sports are going to be deliberate practice fields, or they're going to be highly developed fields. Same thing with music. Like violin has been around for fucking forever, right? So, and they've already figured out like all the best practices of how to get from point A to point B, which point B being a master of the violin. And then C, again, I already touched base. The third one is it's been around for a while. And the reason why it's important if the field's been around for a long time, because we need enough time for top performers we need enough time for people to figure out the field, so that they figure out how to develop the field and how to learn the skill sets that are important, what are important, what are not important. Because if it's been around for a long enough time and it's very competitive and people are continually trying to push towards the top and they're finding better ways to continue to extrapolate on the skills, they're going to figure out, okay, this thing works better than this thing. Like, let me throw away this thing that doesn't work as well. Like, let me throw away B, which doesn't work as well, and take A and do more of A. And then after a while, they realize, oh, if I elaborate on this piece of A, then I can get twice the results as opposed to just doing it A normally. So then they take A, the new version of A, and throw away the original version of A. And it continues to spiral up and up and up and up until eventually you have like the ideal step by step linear path that takes you up. And then the last part 4, is having a series of top performers who have subsequently gone back. They've reached the peak of their field, and now they've gone back down to the bottom to teach people how to get there. And they know the best way to get from point A to point B. And that's massively important. And that was the piece that I was missing. And that's why I went and I got a coach on someone who I'm convinced he's probably one of the best educators when it comes to drumming. Again, Bruce Becker. He's the homie. I've checked out a lot of his stuff before, so far, I'm digging it, but I digress. And then the second piece of deliberate practice is, it's a teacher that can take you from point A to point B. So again, purposeful practice is simply like me taking the knowledge that I kind of figured out on my own, being like, oh, this is where I plug this thing in, right? This is where I plug this thing in, right? And then I kind of view my own work. I like record myself and I watch it back, and then I realize, oh, this and this and this seem like are something that I need to fix. Then let me go out and figure out how to fix those things. So now I see the speed bumps that I'm hitting. Let me go take and plug this thing in that I learned before and smooth that part out. Whereas deliberate practice, where you have a coach, the coach is going to be like Mr. Miyagi, right? You might not necessarily know why you're doing something, like paint the fence, up and down, high block, low block. And they're going to understand the entire process, whereas you're just going to see like this first piece, right? So like, for example, Bruce had me doing some crazy, super basic stuff to fix some of my hand technique. And right now it just seems kind of meh. But I know I've been playing for long enough that I can kind of see farther down the road and see how this is going to help me and how it's going to change my technique. And he also kind of teased it in our lesson as well. But the teacher knows the steps, right? The teacher knows the path. They've already taken students down this path before. You're not the first student they've had, ideally, if they're amazing. So they already know, being like, okay, this guy is here, and I need to take him down this path. Or this guy's over here, I need to take him down like this path. and we need to do this to fix this dude's thing, whatever he's struggling with. I need to do this, this, and this. Whereas this guy's struggling with something completely different. I'm going to do something completely different than I taught that guy how to do. So they already know exactly how to take you from point A to point B. And that's what a lot of people are missing. Because let's look at Tiger Woods. Even Tiger Woods, when he's at the peak of his game, he had coaches. Like I forget how many coaches he had. It's something absurd, like 4 or 7. I don't know why 7's sticking in my head. Maybe we only had 3. I don't know. He had multiple coaches. And he was out practicing golf one day, and he was just doing swings. He was doing drives, and one of his coaches, they're just all watching, and they're not as good as him, obviously, but they were watching, and the one guy noticed, he's like, "Hey, I think I noticed something. Like, just take your thumb and do like this, like make this 2 millimeter shift. I don't golf, I don't like this, like 2 millimeter shift." And he did it, and then story goes is that he crushed the next drive he did. And would he have found that out by himself? Maybe, eventually, but he found out faster because he had a coach that knew exactly what they were looking for and exactly how to fix it and make it better. So, those are the 3 steps of deliberate practice. Again, naive practice, purposeful practice, and deliberate practice. If you're in the naive practice stage, dude, get out of it immediately. Run away as fast as you can, because if you do that, you're going to stay stuck where you're at forever, or you might get a little bit better, but that's not good. You don't want to be there. Even if you don't have the availability or the resources to get a coach, at least go to purposeful practice. Get as close to purposeful practice as you can, or get as close to deliberate practice as you can. Because even if you can't get it entirely, like there's so many resources now that it's like you can go on YouTube, you can, you could like YouTube University, Google, like between those 2 things, that's how I learned a lot of stuff is YouTube, and like it's insane. Obviously, make sure that you are learning from people who know what they're talking about. Again, that's why I don't teach drumming things. I know there's a lot of people who are better than me to do that. Can I teach you basic stuff? Sure. But I digress. So, yes, so get as close to deliberate practice as you can. If not, purposeful practice will take you so far to the point where like you might not even need deliberate practice. Like if you can just get really, really close to it via purposeful practice, dude, you're well on your way to crushing it and hitting that 10,000 hour mark and becoming a master of your skill and becoming the top 1%, or top 1% of 1%, or becoming the best in your field. But as always, hope this was insightful. Remember, get out of naive practice. It's a waste of your time. It's going to stagnate you, and you're going to be like me, like 3-4 years ago, where you almost give up on everything. So, get out of it. Purposeful practice or deliberate practice. Get after it, and yeah, go practice. Practice makes perfect, boys and girls. Or practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Remember that, because again, if you're doing naive practice, not getting very far. So this has been the Practice Perfect Journal. Peace out.